Eddie, you asked me if I would tape a ghost story for you. Well, here it goes. This is a story that was told to me by Kathleen's husband, Peter McGinley, and he was a guard in Ireland way back in my young days. He was stationed in Ballinasloe, and anything that was strange around the country, it always came through to the Garda stations and was sent around to the other smaller stations. Well, his station in Ballinasloe had a chief superintendent, so that meant it was top dog, you see. So anyways, this came through, and McGinley told it to me, and I'm going to tell it to you in the same words or close to it that he used in telling it to me. May the Lord have mercy, and poor Mac, cancer got him in the end. Well, that's something else. This young lad, a young man, he was a little upstairs. And whenever you meet a person who was a little upstairs, you always say, but for the grace of God, there go I. Because the same thing could happen to you. If that thin little line broke, you could be the same as he was. But thank God that you're not. Now this young fella, he had one ambition in his life, and that was to own a threshing mill and a tractor. And he would go around the country in the harvest time, and he would thresh the different people's corn. You see, whoever asked him, he would go to them and he would thresh their corn, and he would give them a good day's work. Now that was his ambition. Now to buy a tractor and a threshing mill back in those days, in the 40s, would have taken a lot of money. And this poor lad had none. He had absolutely none. He was working for a farmer who worked him from daylight till dark. And when he come to payday, all he got for pay was peanuts. Well, that's the way it was with a lot of poor people back in those days. But he saved up the little wages he could get. He saved up enough, and he bought a sweet ticket. And he wanted to win the Irish sweep. And if he could win the Irish sweep, that would buy him a tractor and a threshing mill, and he could go out on the road working for himself, threshing corn for all his neighbours around who would call him to come in. Well, the poor lad, he bought this particular sweeper's coming up, and he bought a ticket. Now it took some squeezing to get the 10 shillings, but he got the 10 shillings and he bought the ticket. This young lad, he had told all his neighbours around the place the number of his ticket. They all knew his ticket. And of course his boss knew his ticket, and the boss had gone off to a fair, and the sweeper's coming up, and for a joke, the day of the drawing, he went to the post office, some small post office, and he sent a telegram to this man that was working for him, and he gave him the number of his ticket that he had won the sweep, and that was it. So the telegram came along to the house where the young lad was working, the farmer's house, and here was his number had been drawn in the sweep. So the lad had won the sweep. So right away he decided he was going to get his threshing mill and his tractor And he didn't wait for his boss to come home. He had drawn the top horse that won the top prize in the race. His ticket had won the top prize in the race. You see, it's all decided on a racetrack, on a race. So he had won this race, and his ticket entitled him to £10,000. Now that was money in those days. Your man didn't wait for the farmer to come home. He took off walking. He had no bike. And he took off, and he's making inquiries as he goes along. Where was there a thrashing mill for sale? Could he buy a tractor? So finally, he came to this place, and they had a thrashing mill for sale, and they also had a tractor for sale. The whole outfit, all he wanted. Here it was, right for sale. So he bought it. He bought the tractor and the trailer, fully equipped to go on the road. And he told the seller that as soon as he gets his ticket through his money through from the Irish sweepstakes, that he'd come around and he'd pay him the cash. And then he would take home his mill and his tractor. And he'd be ready when the Ford would come in to go thrashing corn. All right. The farmer came home, and the young lad was missing. And he'd wonder where he had gone, he didn't know. So finally, one evening, the young lad showed up. And he was all smiles when he met his boss. And he says, I got my tractor, and he says, I got my mill. And he says, as soon as the harvest comes in, he says, I believe in you, he says, and I'll be going out thrashing for people. Well, the farmer realized he had gone too far with his kid. So he told him, he says, listen, he said, that was just a joke I pulled on you. He says, you didn't win this sweep. He says, I knew your number. And he said, I knew the horse that won the race. He said, because the race was run that day, I was away. And I just called you back just for a bit of fun, he said. So he says, forget about it, you know. You didn't win the sweep, forget about it. So the little young man said to him, well, sorry, he said, next harvest, he said, I'll be on the road with my tractor and trailer, because he says, I bought it. And he said, I'll be on the road. And I will thrash for all and everybody who asks me to come and do their work for them. I will do it. And alive or dead, he says, alive or dead, I'll thrash their corn. Alive or dead, I'll thrash their corn. And that was it. Anyways, the young lad, he went out to his stable, and he took a rope reins belonged to a horse, and he threw it over a rafter in the stable, and he hanged himself. So some hours later, the farmer happened to go into the horse stable, and here was his young man hanging by the neck and the reins over a rafter in the stable. He was dead. And they cut him down, and the man was buried and it was all forgotten. And that was the end of it. It was all forgotten. The following harvest, this man was getting ready for his thrashing. He had his corn all in, and he went over to the next village from him, and he met the man who was running the mill over in the next village, and he went over to engage him to come and thrash his corn. So the man said he had 2 more days to do in the village, and then he'd be over to him. So that was fine. So the man came home, and he got his food and stout and all the rest of it ready for the thrashing, and his sacks and everything was ready. His corn was in. So himself and another man who he had hired and was working for him, and they heard the thrasher mill coming up the road towards them. So damn it, the man said, he says to the man that was working for him, he said he wasn't supposed to come to me for 2 days, but he said something must have happened, he's coming sooner. So he says, you better go down and open the gate for him. So the man went down and he opened the gate so that the tractor could pull in. And when he got down there, the noise was there. The sound of the tractor was there. The sound of the wheels on the road were there. But there was no mill. There was no tractor. But the sound was there. And it came in the gate. It came in the gate. And went up a little bit, up the laneway up to the man's farm. And then it stopped. And that was it. There was no more about it. That was it. So the young man, he went up and he told the boss what had happened. And the boss thought to himself, he must be a little bit upstairs, you know. Things like that. And that was all right. 2 days later, when the man in the other village had told him he would come, he did come. And they went down and they opened the gate for him. And he came in and he was driving up the lane up to his house. And the next thing was his tractor stood dead on the road. Just stood on the road. There was something in front of it and he couldn't get by. And the man, he tried everything with his gears. He even backed up to see if she was pulling right and went forward again. But she went forward and went to this point, and that's as far as he could go. He couldn't go any further. That was it. He was blocked right on the man's road because the phantom thrasher had been there 2 days ahead of him. And it was still there. The phantom thrasher, dead or alive, out of a tractor on the road in the harvest. So the man came down, and he talked to the man and he says, try it again. So they tried it again. She wouldn't go. There was something blocking him. So then they sent for the police. And they told the police the story. And that's how the guards came in on it. So they told the police the story. About 2 days ago, this thing had come along and they'd gone down and opened the gate and it came in, and that was the end of it. That night, the tractor and the rig They were sitting there in the driveway and they couldn't pass up. And that night at 12 o'clock, the thrashing started in the man's haggard. The same sound that the mill makes when it's thrashing the corn. The same sound that the tractor makes. Going on steady, thrashing corn. There was no corn under the mill. There was no mill there. But the phantom mill was there, which was thrashing. So, anyways, they brought engineers from as far away as England with tape recorders, and they taped the whole thing trying to find out what was doing this. And the mill started up again the next night, thrashing away. They taped the whole thing. And finally, they sent for the priest. And the priest came out and he said some prayers. And he shook some holy water around. And he asked the thing to let things go by. The next day, the tractor that was sitting abroad in his driveway was fit to come up and go into the haggard. And that, the next day, he thrashed the man's corn, and then he went on his way. But the owner, seeing what he did, and knowing what the lad said to him, living or dead, he says, I'll have a tractor on the road. So the man put his farm up for sale, and he got as far away from that part of the country as he could. And that was the end of that. And that is the story as it was told to me. I'm not asking you to believe it. I'm not asking you not to believe it. You use your own judgment. But that was the story, the way it was. And that came through the police station.